Winspiration, the way to the essential. On UK Health Radio, Winspiration brings wisdom and information for an extraordinary future. Together, we can shape the world we want to live in. So let's get real and create the idea. Be extraordinary. Welcome to another episode of Winspiration Radio. Today I'm in South Africa. I wanted to spend the winter, from the Swiss winter here, and a friend invited me, asked me, you want to come to a book reading? I says, okay, I'm here, I have nothing else to do, I join you. So I went to a so-called book reading, not really knowing what will happen there, and then I was really surprised. It was an interesting pub we were there, and then I experienced that a lady had a book written, but not she was reading the book. No, it was a book about letters to men. And some of those men were there speaking, and it was extremely interesting. So different topics, so much wisdom, different worldviews. I said, wow, I would love to talk with this woman and ideally present it to you. And today we are lucky to have her here, Leslie Downie, and she gave me what she also did in life. It's so extremely, she has a lot of experience in different areas. She is also from profession, I can say lawyer.
Yes.
Yeah, you studied law, worked in different, wrote books about it, writes about land, but also a murder story. So different books, and it's a huge variety of interest from quantum physics, everything what you did. And then she got the idea also about, what is it between women and men? Like she said, the Undertaler, it says, okay, we possess the woman, so how is the relationship today? How many women can have male friends and so? And then nobody is today really writing letters, and she came up with the idea, writing letters to men. And this is a book I really can recommend it. So different stories, and it will bring you a lot of ahas. So thank you for being here, and information and wisdom for a better future. And I know there's a lot in you and in the book what really can help us. Let me ask first, what made you go to the decision, I want to study law?
Sure. Well, I know you were a lawyer as well, because I looked at you on the internet and I know that you were a tax lawyer, if I'm not mistaken. Am I also allowed to ask questions?
Yes, it's true.
So when you approached me, I knew you must be clever. If you were a tax lawyer, I knew you were clever. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I've been all kinds of... I started out, I wanted to be an architect, but I did a career guidance test, and they said I'd be best at law. My father was a criminal lawyer, and he said, oh, Leslie, I don't know, women who lawyers are tough cookies. Don't be a lawyer, but if it's what you want to do, do it. So I studied it, but then I also did a BA. For the BA at LB, I took English as a major as well. I had language BA as well as... And then I really wanted to carry on with the English, but I thought, let me be a solid citizen and carry on with the law. So it was kind of that kind of progression.
And was it a kind of deeper intention? Why law? We thought architecture. What it was not just about, okay, I know how to draw something. So what you wanted to bring in the world?
I think when I studied law, South Africa in those years was a real roller coaster, and I was quite young and naive. I don't think I had a vision, although I did in those days register for a PhD on dependents' rights. I was lecturing at the University of South Africa straight after university, but it was later that my passion for the law and justice in society and so on, that kind of developed as I matured. I wasn't a student activist or anything like that. Okay. Although I did do a thing on conditions, people who are conscientious objectors, I did a little research thing on that. But I wouldn't call myself an activist. it was more as I matured, and particularly on the poverty level, that I started getting that focus, land poverty.
Yeah, and you worked first as in the law field as an assistant for a lawyer.
Yes.
Who, if I understood it right, it was very new, this kind of work law. What they
Labor law.
Labor law equality. Yes, sorry. In German translated, it's work. Labor law.
Yes.
So that was really new. So as a kind of pioneer in you as well.
Well, he was the pioneer, but it was the first course in labor law, can you believe it, all those years ago at my university. And I joined him, and that was when NUMSA, the trade union, we were management labor lawyers, but Cyril Ramaphosa was a big name in those days. So I suppose over that period, as I got into my work life, I became more interested in, or not interested, I was always interested, but more thinking, how can I contribute?
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
So here comes contribution already. And then you write a book about murder.
Oh, but that was much later. No, I wrote a book then that I never got published, which I called it Ubuntu. I spent 3 years writing it, and I never got it published. That sort of broke my heart then, and I left writing for a long time. And then I wrote later. I think it's quite important to fail if you want to. Yeah. So that
everybody says I learned more my failures and from my very good times. Yeah. Very interesting. And now here comes the idea with the contribution. And what has your interest in quantum physics to do with that?
That's more of a personal journey. And when I spoke to Mark Miles, I'm just interested in the brain and neuroscience and the frontiers. I read a lot about that. I have no science background, so I'm quite a maverick with the reading. But I suppose I want to understand my own body, and I've just explored that for a long time to understand why. But even though I've had a great interest in spirituality all my life, I like quantum biology interests me, and I like to understand the physiological causes for what other people might see as more ESP or mystical or whatever. I'm interested in that avenue of research. Mm-hmm. But I have no authority in that field because it's not my training. It's just a personal interest.
Yeah, a lot of people have authority in something and never studied it in the normal way. Yeah. So it's a question what you really understand about it. But as a lawyer, or like if you're a defense lawyer or whatever, you often think also, why did they do it or whatever? Yeah. What happened? Why people tick like they tick?
Yes.
And is this part also why you started with this book? Why you write, okay, why have women, is this a problem, or is this just not thinking about having male friends?
So I think being a lawyer, I was fortunate. I had lots of male friends. When I was at university, I mean, times have changed. 55 people graduated in my class. I think there were 7 women. So my best friends were men. And then I went into a legal environment, your best friends are men. But I found, and South Africa is probably more like that than European countries, but even European countries, once you have a partner, I'm speaking now about men who identify as men, in my current environment. So as you get older and people have partners or they get married, the friendships between men and women then become very superficial. Mm-hmm. That seems to be the pattern. And Mervyn Stutter, that I wrote to, who's the professional comedian who writes in the end, and he's the only one who's a UK person. He said to me, even in the UK, they say, women have friends, but men don't really have proper friendships, because they go to the pub and they sort of say, how are you, and chat, but they don't sort of interact at a deep level in the UK, even that. And even there, for a married woman to have a friend with a close friendship with a man that's not a friendship of both her husband and herself, it's kind of, people are a bit uneasy about that. So for me, because I went into I started focusing on gender rights and poor women and children. So it interested me that I get on so well with men. I've got so many male friends, but even in my life, there were quite a lot of contexts where it's sort of seen as bad manners to be too friendly with a man if it's not a romantic, or if he's. So I have difficulty with that, and I think that's quite. If you scratch a little bit, it's quite an entrenched worldview everywhere. That once people are in commit, if they're single, they can be in a romantic relationship or they can be close friends. But as soon as one of them is, then it becomes, ooh.
Yeah.
And I mean, that.
And the same is also if experience, at least say in the German-speaking area, I experience it when people divorce.
Yeah.
The others have a problem. Who can we invite? We only can be for one.
Exactly.
We can't be friends with two anymore.
Yes.
It's not possible. Yes. So what is going on in people?
It just seems to me quite childish, and it's a form of censorship in society that you're not permitted to have deep friendships with, you know. So I've worked quite hard at doing that because I just disagreed with it. And so for years I have developed relationships, usually writing to men who are overseas, because that's also a bit more long-term correspondence with a guy who traveled all over the world and was in refugee camps in China and everything, and then in America. So I had done that, but I always had to be quite strategic about it. It wasn't something, you know, I sort of almost had to ask permission to do it, which is just...
That's right. When you said men don't have really friends and women can have friends, I just get a picture. Okay, you know, a few thousand years back, I needed a man companion to hunt.
Yeah.
So we were working together. Can I rely on you? Well, afterwards, we don't need each other.
Right.
But if the women were in the village and then had babies, who can take care of my baby?
Yeah.
Okay, I need to find someone I can trust. So maybe they're wherever it comes from. And then you wrote about this, mentioned it before, the Neanderthal, and says, okay, the woman is my possession.
Yeah.
And we still, in the language, I guess in the English language also, I have a house, I have a wife, I have kids. So we're still in this having. So if you're on the free market, nobody possesses you, so can be a friend? No, you're in a committed relationship. No, his car, no, not his car, but his possession. Yeah. So I don't want to be friend with the car or the wife or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's really a crazy idea how we see humans. And that is interesting here in the so-called rainbow nation. Everything I feel here is a little bit different in this way.
Yes. To be fair, though, one needs to say it's more women who police that than men. Mm-hmm. Women who will police it's not right to have this kind of friendship. So it's not, even while it may date back to the thing of women as property, women are, by and large, more the people who promote this worldview. So it's, it's not... Anyway, I hope it will change. So for me... Also, if I look at my daughters, the one who's married and the one who's not married, I'm interested to see with the one who's not married, how this will develop as opposed to the other one.
How did it change, if it changed, and looking in the future, and we see the world needs a lot more women anyway, and it is a tough time to get them in whatever, the boards of big companies or governments. But it's happening.
Yes.
Actually, do you really need men?
So I fully support the whole feminine. Again, when I was young, I was just naive and I didn't really think about it. But the further I went with my legal career, I've been very focused on gender rights and women's rights and children's rights. So that is my position. But I do think that when men and women become really good friends, a different kind of relationship develops that's actually very constructive. And I think maybe a lot of what goes wrong isn't just because women aren't, that's obviously a very important factor for women to have equal opportunities, but it's also because there's been this sort of divide of sharing experience as close friends. And I think both sides of that friendship can really benefit from a friend of the opposite sex. So I suppose what I would say is, in the past there was all this talk about a man and a woman, they get married and the two of them, it's a new whole and they're complementary and all that. But I think friendships can, so I would think, yes, possibly developing friendships with men is a route towards minimizing this them and us, men who've always had the power and done all this, patriarchal systems, and women who've been the victims. And, quite frankly, maybe if in another 100 years women are in power, they might in reverse do the same to men as what men did to them. I think power is usually the issue rather than gender. And so, I just think friendship is an important, it's a more natural approach to resolving conflict.
Who has the real power? I believe the women.
Yeah.
Because who is raising the boy?
Oh.
It's always a woman.
Mm.
But mainly the woman, the mother.
Yeah.
And if you see gangster filth or whatever, and if you go to China or whatever,
yes,
if mother says something, literally mother says something, so it's who has really the true power. You just mentioned marriage. When I studied, so it's 50 years ago, at that time already we were discussing in workshops in the university this institution, marriage. Is this really something for today's time? When did we start with the idea, the good and bad times, and until death separates you? First of all, I don't like it. I just made a podcast. You program it already, death. So if we go spiritual, isn't everything end? Or even if one of us would die, could we meet somewhere else again? It's not in this. And if we go through 3,000 years back, and the lifespan was 30 years, and it was really about sticking together with that, it could make sense, really, at that time. But today, lifespan is increasing. Biologist or medicine guy said, okay, the body is made for 120 to 150 years. It's just us killing us earlier, the way we live. But is this also, this concept of marriage, really separating us? If we just give way for it and says, okay, we can have committed relation, different forms and everything, and then we can have the friendships.
Yeah, that's something to think about. I mean, cohabitation is now so mainstream, which I think would be kind of what you're saying, but I don't think that would shift in any way this thing about friendships. Any kind of committed relationship, I think this dynamic is going to come to the fore about friendships with other people not being appropriate. I think I would still lean towards saying men would be the people who benefit from marriage and committed relationships falling away. Women who are childbearing, women who are universally, economically nowhere in the same position as men. I mean, maybe in 50 or 100 years that would change. But I think if you got rid of all those structures, I suspect women would be more vulnerable than before. That would be my guess. I did a lot of research and stuff on African customary systems where they're polygynous and different household, when I was doing my pro-poor writing on land rights and so on. And, the African customary system has lots of checks and balances if it's properly applied, and protections for the women, even though it's polygynous. But yeah, no, I don't think for marriage to fall away or committed relationships. I think that's a man's desire. I don't think the women are going to be that keen on that.
I don't know if it's a man's desire. Maybe that's what I was. Is it just depending on the sex drive, the hormones?
Yeah.
So the older we get, we can become friends again.
Exactly.
Yeah. Do you see this happening?
My friendships, because I've always worked on having the friendships, I've had them.
Yeah.
I'm single now, and have been for some time. And so, no, I wouldn't say there's been a difference in those friendships, but I'm very aware that I've had to work at it, and that most of my friends would not be in an equivalent position to mine.
So we don't know us so long, but I read the book and experienced there, and now here, you are quite clear with yourself. So this is an important thing.
Quite what with myself?
You say you know yourself.
Oh, right, yes.
Yeah, so you know what you want in life, where your waters are and everything. Is this something essential that you can have friendships with others?
To know yourself.
Yeah, because someone who is we are trained to fit in.
Yes.
Yeah, we are not really trained. What is your dawn? What is your essence? What is your purpose?
Yeah.
And we're not even trained to value the lifetime, so with whom you surround yourself. So if you know what you want to spend your time for and everything, isn't that then so much easier to have friends? Because what fits to you?
I completely agree. And that's why I suppose also for me temperamentally, I make friends with men easily because they often share my interests in a way. Increasingly, I have more female friends that share my interests, but in previous years, you know, I just naturally... So I think if you know yourself, you know your interests, yes, that is true.
So then we can come to kind of physics. Everything is frequency and information on it. So if you clear with yourself, you know your frequency.
Yeah.
And then synchronicity comes in. And then on this frequency level, you easily can make friends because of the frequency and not so much about the gender.
Yes, that sounds good to me. I can see that. Temperament. And yeah, certainly.
And if we, like you said, quantum physics, whatever there is, well, if we talk about the quantum soup, so what is really the difference between you and me? We came out of the same soup. We are the same. Or if you go religious or even what is a modern science about consciousness, we are all the same. Or if we go in the non-duality, you are me, or I have you.
So I must say, if I was clever enough, the one thing I would really like to understand is entanglement, because I do think the quantum physics concept of entanglement and as people interact, that's the sort of reading I like to follow and see.
So what is it what interests you there? What is it, or what you hope, if everybody would understand this more, what could happen?
Now, I'm going to make a fool of myself because I don't have a science background, so my language is probably all wrong. But the thing of entanglement, where particles at a distance immediately have information with no causal connection. So if you just conceptually think, people would sometimes refer to that in certain concepts as ESP. So that sort of notion where there can be this knowledge or this exchange of information at the particle level. I'm very interested in all of that. And I think when you talk about frequency, and it's kind of a similar, but really I'm an ignoramus with this stuff. I just read it for pleasure and from a complete, in Afrikaans they would say, leek, amateur.
What does it make with you if you say, oh, this is happening? What then? What can the kind of result out of it? Okay, if I change myself, I change others?
I'm not clever enough to know that answer, but my feeling as I've thought, maybe I can give you a simple little example of synchronicity that was with a book. I was writing a book on my own, and I had decided who the man, female was going to be. It was fiction, and who the man was going to be. I decided someone who's sort of out of the stream most of the time and out of society. I thought, those bell divers, that would be great because he's underwater all these months, and then he comes up. This will be great for the plot. So I decide that just before I go to sleep. I wake up at 6, and I think I'm going to have to read up all about this because I really don't know enough about what these men do. 6 o'clock, I get in my car to go for a hike, and we go up the back of Solari's Pass, where you can still see the wagon wheels cut into the rocks from where they used to go over Solari's Pass. On the way down, we get a bit lost, and we take the wrong road, and there's this big dam, and I see all these guys with all their kit on. I say, "What are you doing?" And they say, "No, we're from the Strand. We train people. We're bell divers. This is one of the 3 training places in the country," or whatever. I thought about it. So now then, if something like that happens in my life, I want to observe it and think, what's this all about? And what does it mean for me? But and this is a very quirky thing, my decision after that was, because I was already toying with this book, is I'm not going to write that book. I'm going to write this book. And I think it's because gradually in my own not scientific way, I've come to the conclusion that those experiences you have of that nature, sometimes it's too much about your ego, and sometimes you need to resist your own ego. So when I saw that whole thing happening, I thought, okay, I'm writing the other book.
Yeah, well, that was very good, because if you're tuned in, you get different information. You can pull the information from the conscious field. And with the divers at the beach could theoretically be just because you had the thought before, there's more awareness. And that's why you see them now. Because if you buy a new car and decide to buy this new car, you see it more often on the street. So it could be just simply this selected perception of what we have. But there are other things, I think, what it is. Like I once lived in a house. We had a hall, so the entrance hall, and 2 wolfhounds. Were laying there. And you couldn't go from the garage in the house. You needed to go out. And then I had my office. And when I was thinking, oh, I forgot something in the car, and I need to pass by the dogs, go in the garage and get this thing what I forgot there. The dogs ignore it. They were laying there. The moment I stand up from my desk, I was thinking, I drive somewhere. I go out, and they were standing in front of the door.
Right.
And that is also what Rupert Sheldrake, the super guy in morphogenetic fields, and where we had also with the 100 monkeys stories. So on one island, suddenly they wash the potatoes, and after a while, on the other island, they wash the potatoes. So is this entanglement? No, because they were never together. So there's something traveling, like radio waves or whatever. Yeah, we can hear the radio everywhere, but we don't see the notes flying through the air. So there is something really.
So I really feel that physics is going to start explaining this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think maybe a lot of the off-the-wall, what people saw as off-the-wall ideas. So for me, it's quite important if I observe something in my own life, or someone I trust tells me a story about what happens to them, and it sounds, irrational, not real. I think we need to pay attention to those things.
Yes. And be so much more happy about the results.
Yeah.
Like in medicine, a lot of science blames placebo.
Yeah.
Oh, it worked. It helped. It healed.
Yeah.
So why being against it? Yeah. And universe, everything, physics is more probabilities. The whole universe is only probabilities. And with energy and focus, we can make it more probable that it's happened.
But I must say, if you want to speak about quantum physics, Mark Miles, that I wrote to in the book, he's the one who actually has the background and could speak much more intelligently than me on it.
Yeah, it's not so much about when it says what we feel and experience.
Yeah.
And how we implement those things in our life. Like when you said, okay, I met this diver at the beach. From now, I think different. I watch myself different. I organize it different. And how you can use it. For example, I work a lot like this with thinking. After I cut down all my law stuff and everything, I went into network marketing, so it's a distribution system. And I sometimes was just sitting there, what do I need to change in myself that the business can grow better? Are you familiar with the Hawaiian Ho'oponopono philosophy?
Not really, no.
That is the kind of crazy thing. There was a kind of prison, but it was not just the criminals, so they were kind of psychic.
Okay.
So they were 30-something, and they got a new doctor.
Uh-huh.
And after 2 years, it says they closed it because they were all healed and could go out.
Huh.
So, what a strange doctor, huh? But the clue is, he never talked to one of the patients. He always looked, what is it? What is the problem there? What do I need to heal in me and change in me? And it changed in them. Like Gandhi said, you need to be the change you want to see in the world. So what? And it's amazing what happened. Yeah. So, you're interested in also the humans. What do you believe from your experience? What humans can do, or where we are going? We're not the Neanderthals anymore. We're now talking about friendship between. And that's where will we go?
Yeah, I like the letter format because it's a little bit arm's length. And if you're a little bit, I'm not an introvert, I'm a bit on the extrovert scale. But I think for people who are a bit more introverted, they can express their sort of deeper thoughts and shape them and so on. But I think, South Africa, we've got this long history with apartheid. And the emphasis on diversity now is great. And in a funny kind of a way, the conditioning of the separate development and all that under apartheid. I think South Africa, we're very focused on diversity, respect for diversity. And as lawyers, you've got to know how to step into other people's shoes. You'll defend the person on this side or the opposite side. You've got to be able to make that shift. And if I could make a contribution to anything in the future years, that's the side of keeping the space open. And that applies to friendships. I tried with the book, I got 10 men with totally different backgrounds because I wanted to keep that sort of space open for no matter what your... so I think you can say, where are we going? But where would I like us to go? I would like us to go, the Bill of Rights thing and respect for diversity. The laws are all there, but in practice in society, we haven't really learned. You've either got the very conservative side or the very woke side, and the two sides don't like each other. I would like to contribute towards being able to maintain that balance of everyone being able to have a voice.
Mm-hmm. I think the voice thing is important if we want to go direction more democracy.
Yeah.
Without it, it's not possible.
Yeah.
So you need to accept other voices as opinions.
Yeah.
But for me also with the book, it's not only that you had 10 different people, but you wrote back. You went in a conversation with them. And it is so you can tune in and talk about all the topics with them and ask them challenging questions. This I found really remarkable. And so how can you do that? It is not just gathering some information in the past because you didn't know what they were writing.
That's quite a long story. I don't know whether we'll have time for me to answer it. I say to you, when I was very young, I did my English honours degree and I had to finish the last paper at Trafalgar Square at the embassy there, South Africa, and I got there and the door was locked. So I thought, what am I going to do for an hour? I'll go to the National Gallery to wait to do my literary theory paper. And in literary theory, they teach you how to read a text as if you're a Marxist, as if you're a capitalist, as if you're a feminist, as if you're a patriarchal person, structuralist, post-structuralist. So I sat in the National Gallery and looked at this wonderful painting of Christ before the high priest, and there are all these people sort of standing, looking at this, you can see they've got small souls, the people looking on, and the great soul in the middle, and the high priest who thinks he's everything. And then I just asked myself, what does each of those observers, if you gave each of them, say, one's a capitalist, one's a Marxist, if they're looking at Jesus in that position. And from that time, it was a bit of an idiosyncratic thing. I trained myself with any kind of text I was reading whether it was a sacred text, whether it was a legal text, in kind of what lawyers would be, to put myself in the shoes of the person with this worldview and then the exact opposite worldview.
Mm-hmm.
And when I tried to contribute towards land rights and poverty alleviation and so on, I tried to do that same thing. So I even, took fairly seriously an interpretative thing where people would believe in women's submission, which doesn't come naturally to me at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I would do the feminist reading and then that to see. So I think it conditioned myself
Mm-hmm.
to automatically, if there's one perspective, go to the
I
opposite.
think this is one of the important things, really, what we should all understand. As long as we live on the level of duality, polarity,
Yes.
there is not only one.
Yeah.
There must be the other one, the law.
Yeah.
So if I ignore and never come closer to the truth, and we know exactly that's the opposites, the true opposites. And then we have the other problem, you can't prove that this is true.
Exactly.
You only can prove is it's wrong.
Yes.
Yeah, so, and are we really interested in coming closer to the truth? And that we need a whole different system in science because you have a theory and protect it the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And says, last year you said something different. It's not okay.
Yeah.
It's to really understand that we're all evolving. And for me, it just also, now being here in South Africa, and you just mentioned the apartheid, how could, out of this kind of fighting country, came the so-called rainbow nation? What makes it, or what makes it better in the future, the country? Or was it just Mandela and now it's gone? Or is it still in the country?
Well, I mean, I remember from those early years when I was involved with labour law, Cyril Ramaphosa was a major influence in the Constitution and drafting the Bill of Rights, possibly the most relevant person at that time. So one has to hope that currently we still have that energy here. And I think, I mean, I'm prejudiced, but I think South Africa has more experience of the problems of diversity because of our history and because every day of our lives we have to try and be aware of our own microaggression or whatever it is. So it's the air we breathe here. So hopefully some of that experience can translate into, and there are lots of brave people doing amazing things in the country at the moment. I think in the last 5 years we've seen an emergence of some real heroes.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I would hope, one's got to be hopeful that we can capture some of that energy still.
Yeah. And in the end, it's not about this etiquette or whatever, you're a Marxist or whatever, you're this.
Yeah.
That's what from Mandela was also interviewed for an American journalist. And the journalist complained a little bit that he's doing deals with Gaddafi at the time. And he says, I said, our principle is not that the enemies of our friends are also our enemies. Depends on how they treat us.
Right.
Yeah. And so, what an interesting aspect. And if we really go to the principle, how we treat each other, I think that is where society should go. So not having just a rainbow nation, maybe a rainbow world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and go for that. I know in Germany it's a long way to go. If you go there to the parliament and the parties are fighting, it's crazy. Like you said, childish kindergarten. And they're not really working on the best for the country. They only work for the best of whatever the political power, what they believe. But so how can this special experience of South Africa, what you said about the history, develop in the world?
Sure, I wouldn't feel myself really qualified to kind of say that. I think people need to speak for themselves as individuals, and I do think just to reach out to your own circle of influence and try and carry that torch as far as you can, and to be willing to agree to disagree. I think it's tremendously important, and respect. Just respect.
Respect, dignity,
Yeah.
and everything. To accept that.
Yeah.
Great. Dignity or respect. That is not really a totally new idea, but there are a lot of good ideas for long time, but not still really used or lived. I don't know if it's so common in South Africa already, but in America and now also in Europe, we're very familiar, like with the professor from Jerusalem, Harari. He wrote books from Sapiens, where we come from, and then this book, Homo Deus, Deepak Chopra, Meta-Human, the Spencer, the Superhuman. So it's a lot, also with this epigenetic stuff. We can develop us ourselves. We can really change ourselves on DNA. We can, especially also when we think about artificial intelligence is coming, or what are we doing as humans and humanity? So what is your, and you don't need to be an expert, just what you feel, your wisdom, let it flow through. What you feel is possible for humans, where should we go, and where you see dangers and where you see real big chances.
I didn't feel I kind of have the right to tell other people what to do, because my path has been a very idiosyncratic one, and what's worked for me may well not work for other people at all. So it's more I can tell what's worked for me, but not, I couldn't say whether it would work for others. But in terms of that, when I tried to do all those readings, Marxist, capitalist, and women's submission and the other, a lot of them were really difficult for me. And I really believed in God as a spiritual entity, and I found the only way I could do that reading honestly and with the right attitude was to take the position, first I take the position, God believes in women's submission. Then I take the position, God believes in feminism. And if I could try and put myself in those shoes, because I felt then I could kind of submit to this reading that was so uncomfortable for me, because I'm just intellectually taking that position. So for me, that worked. It enabled me to inhabit really uncomfortable worldviews for a space. Not that I would keep them forever at all. So that was a mechanism that worked for me. I don't know whether it would work for other people who have a spiritual belief in God, to take the adversarial position, so they have a particular perspective they come from, but then to put themselves in their opponent's position and say, well, if God is, now let me pretend this is what God supports, that I think can be a strategy to rise above your own, preferences.
I'm totally believing in this concept.
Yeah.
And okay, you use maybe the wording God or whatever, but the concept is, like you said with the lawyer, I go in the shoes of the other person. What is it? Because if we really understand on the duality level, there's no thing that's only good. It must have also bad. There's nothing bad without good.
Yeah.
So every theory I have, so what is good in feminism, there must be something bad with it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so whatever, if you understand that, and that is exactly what I feel what you're saying, I want to see also the other side and understand it, and then like thesis, antithesis, we come to a synthesis.
Yeah.
How we can get the best out of it. The problem is only we create a new thesis.
Yeah.
And we come to the next dilemma.
Exactly.
But that is our consciousness can grow and that's so many people are one-sided. There's just one polarity view, and that's what parties and everything using. But this is, I think, is the most important thing that we should train kids and everything, and see that nothing is only this.
Yeah.
It's that all always has two sides to go into this. And then if we believe in the universe and injustice, they are endless, unlimited, not endless, unlimited possibilities. So we can always go to the better. We can always find something better if we're really interested in it, not just fighting each other. Yeah. The more we understand, we can go create win-win. Otherwise, we only can win-lose or lose-lose. That's a
Very true.
very, very, very interesting into them. And you have any idea if you now get the possibility to create a new, let's say, what do you call it, kindergarten or kind of school for young kids, what you would teach them?
I don't think I'm very good with young children, so I wouldn't. But I think my next little passion that I want to do, I want to create a festival that's for writers. I don't want to say too much because I'm registering a trademark at the moment, but I really want it to be a forum where there is no censorship and the access is easier and particularly, yes. So it wouldn't be a case of, I don't feel I have the capacity to teach, but I'm quite a systems person. So I would like to put together a platform that releases other people to...
This is what you would do on Earth. But
Yeah.
look back more, okay, you have kids. You
I
said-
did, yes.
Yes.
3.
So if you just go now, I go in the mother position or whatever, as now they're young, from what I know today, what is it what you want to give them? What they, from you, can say, oh, that is, if they understand this, if they can see this, that would be great.
So I've got great kids, so I'm sort of not that concerned about how parenting was. But if there was one thing that I think I didn't understand as a younger person, because I became a land tenure specialist, and I read a lot about African customary perceptions, and I was interested in dependence and children. So I do think the commitment to extended family and the African commitment to extended family, I think people with a Western background, it's become very much nuclear family and people for themselves and so on. And whereas now, at my point in life, I think that view of, and it's not only extended family, but community, the African sense of, I don't know whether accountability is the word. I think I would have put more emphasis on that in my youth.
Is it something like this? We have a kind of saying, if it translated right from the German actors, to raise a kid that needs a village.
Yes. But also now with so much drama in the world at the moment and people who are going to reach out to help each other, if you look also past centuries, families who, and if you look at Zimbabweans who are working here, difficult jobs and so on, but they're sending money back for their cousin or whatever in Zimbabwe. So I think that's a wonderful African attribute which people of a Western heritage need to appropriate more. So in my educational for children, I think I would have, that was not part of what I was saying to them all the time. I've said it in recent years, but I think I would change that.
So this is somehow, I feel, the same like the book. Even this is more grown-ups.
Yeah.
But it's about, I can have more friends.
Yeah.
I can see friends. Not like you're not allowed to have contact anymore. You cannot allow to be friendship. So we experience so much separation, even in the so-called healthy society. But you say with the kids, and here, get rid of all the separation.
Yeah.
And it's as we are just kind of equal different topics. We experience that. You have this wisdom. You know more of that. Well, why not all be friends?
Yeah. Hopefully.
So that is somehow what you hear doing. But, okay, how can the kids learn this already?
Yeah, I mean, I feel really privileged that you feel that way about the book. I'm very grateful. I'm glad you received it like that. I don't see myself as an educationalist, though. It's not, you know what I mean? I'd love to write, I'd love to do it, but I love the fact that...
Interfering,
but
showing.
nice that it's nice for me that you feel it came across like that.
Yeah. And if I understood it right, you even offer that people can come to you and say, if I have the idea or want to have advice to write a book like this, you help them. Is that true?
Yes, I will do that. I'm quite focused on this festival at the moment I want to do. But yes,
as in general,
but I will do
people can
that
contact
as well.
you
Yeah.
and says, oh, and can you help me to have a book like this, if it's for the friendship or the different
Yes.
topics, with the letters to write the letters to different areas. So that could be something very valuable coming in the world by this creating more friendships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is there anything what you can say this, like with the platform, what is it what you really want to bring in the world with it?
So the friendship is important to me sort of on a personal level. But I think, and as a lawyer, there's always legislation about free speech, and but at a certain level, free speech is being closed down on many different levels. There's actually considerable censorship at the moment, coming in different ways. So I would say more on a sort of public platform. That's the kind of area that interests me most now. You know, to create some sort of platform or system where that isn't, and I think particularly in the arts. And I do think getting a formal publisher, there's an element of censorship. I mean, people would be cross with me for saying that, but it's so difficult to get a formal publisher. And there's a whole economic side to it. So it's almost like that, just by the way the system works, sort of censors certain voices being heard because of the expense and not getting someone. So I'm interested in the whole side of making it easier for people, and people who don't have money but are passionate about an idea or whatever, that for me, and not plugging my ideas, but what drives them.
Great. And that is all about encouraging others. And you heard it, she is willing. If you write to her, you will get the email address here. You can see it and write to her, and feel free and start your own book, writing letters to men or women or whatever topic it is. Thank you, Leslie, for sharing so much and being so open and so humble. I don't know, I'm not an expert. I think it's really, really interesting, your worldview and what you did here. And I wish everybody reads the book and learn from it. So thank you, and join us at the next episode of Winspiration Radio. This was another episode of Winspiration Wisdom and Information to support you getting out of illusions, false identifications, limiting beliefs. We all have the power and potential to be more, do more, have more, give more. Reality is what is possible in the universe, and the best is yet to come. If you want to dive deeper into possibilities of creating the extraordinary future, go to winspiration.global or to wolfgangsonnenburg.com. More information and some free downloads like the email program Dream Goals Reality or a copy of the book The Best Is Yet to Come can be found on the UK Health Radio website under the Listen on Demand and Presenters section. Join us again next week on the Winspiration Show for more wisdom and information to create your extraordinary future.